This event is sponsored by Miro. Miro is the online whiteboard platform where product teams can work together effectively. If you don't know where to start, it's packed with over 50 templates for product teams. Whether you need a Kanban, mind map, retrospective, product roadmap, or user story map, we've got you covered. Try it for free.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today to this virtual presentation. I'm excited to talk to you today about setting goals with OKRs. It's one of my favorite topics. A lot of my team members give me a hard time about how much I like talking about OKRs, and so I'm really always excited to share it with other people. So quick intro, my name is Brian Peterson. I work at the New York Times. I'm a product manager on our Care Platforms team. So what my team does is we're in charge of developing and maintaining all the technology that our call centers use in order to do their customer support. So whether that's an online chat service, an automated self-serve solution, or our phone systems or an automated phone response system, my team is in charge of managing all of those. So here's what I'm looking to teach everyone today. And so by the end of this session, you should learn what OKRs are and why you would use them, a process for efficiently planning OKRs for your team, and handling common OKR challenges. So first step, of course, with any three-letter abbreviation is just defining what OKRs are. So OKRs are objectives and key results. So the objectives part of it is objectives are new goals that we want to achieve within a set period of time. Generally, we plan our OKRs on a quarterly basis on my team. So these objectives are goals that we want to achieve within the quarter, within the next quarter. Key results, I'll be calling them KRs a lot, are how we will measure our success at achieving the objectives. So the idea is that each objective would have some key results under it, and achieving those key results would achieve the higher level objective. So they look something like this. You'd have 3 to 5 objectives in general, 3 to 5 key results for each objective. So you'd have your goal that you want to achieve, and then the results you're expecting that will prove that you've achieved that goal. 3 to 5 is kind of the sweet spot. You don't want to overcommit to a large number of objectives and key results. And it's also something that you want yourself and your teams to be paying attention to and keeping in mind as they do work each quarter. So it's important for them 3 to 5 is kind of the right amount for people to be able to keep it in their mind and not be overwhelmed or forget them. So some guidelines for OKRs. OKRs should not be a metric to judge team or individual performance. Meeting all your OKRs should not be a requirement for getting a raise or a promotion. Failing all of your OKRs should not be a reason to get fired. Like, it's not that. It's about getting better at planning goals, and so not achieving them doesn't mean the team did poorly. It probably means you maybe didn't plan the best goals or overcommitted. It's also not a list of projects. It's really important to remember that when you're planning goals, you're not saying, I'm going to do this work, and this work in the quarter. You're trying to say, here's what I want out of the work that I'm going to be doing next quarter. It's about the outcomes. It's not about the projects you're doing and the very specific work. And this is very important. It's not determined solely by leadership. So the idea of a leader creating a set of OKRs and then just telling the team to achieve them, that really doesn't work. What's important and what's powerful about OKRs is getting feedback from team members and making it a collaborative process so that there's feedback both ways. So OKRs should be stretch goals too. The idea here is that you want to aim for a goal that you would hit only if everything went great, only if you really hit it out of the park. It's good to have that room for improvement so that your team can feel challenged. So meeting 60 to 70% of your OKRs should be considered a success. Meeting 100% probably means you were a little too easy on yourself and your team. And that's a clear sign that you need to plan either more goals or more aggressive goals. Meeting less than 60% of your OKRs, again, doesn't mean you're bad at planning, doesn't mean your team is bad. It just means that maybe you were too ambitious. It's really hard to predict how long things are going to take before you take them on. So it's a good sign for the future to try to iterate and get better and better at finding what the right amount of OKRs are for your team. It's going to be different for every single team out there. So the most common form of setting goals really isn't within organizations or teams. It's really about New Year's resolutions. You know, everyone sets New Year's resolutions at some point in their life, and it's the most common way that people think about goals. It happens every year. People commit to things like exercise more, read more, save more money. These are the 10 most common New Year's resolutions listed here on the screen. And the bad news is that they have an 8% success rate in general. And that doesn't mean that people are just bad at improving themselves. It really means that they're probably poorly thought out, ineffective goals. So let's take this one, exercise more. You could achieve this goal by training for and running a marathon or training for and running a 5K. Those are two very, very different things. And for someone who's a marathon runner, training for and running a 5K would not achieve the goal. Meanwhile, for someone who's never run in their life, a 5K would be a huge goal to achieve. Similarly, if I could achieve the goal of exercising more by doing 100 push-ups a day, but if I never do push-ups, then doing 1 push-up a day would achieve that goal. It may not make me healthy, but I would technically meet the goal. So the reason exercise more is a bad goal is because it's not SMART. And so there's this acronym, SMART goals you may have heard of. And it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. And it's very important as you're thinking about your OKRs and thinking about what objectives and key results you want to plan, that you think of these as SMART goals and you plan them accordingly. So I want to take through an example of a key result and applying this methodology to it. So let's say your organization had an objective of, like all organizations, of being more profitable. And if you said, I think my team can increase the company's revenue, that's going to be a key result for my team. Well, this is not a SMART goal yet. Increase revenue is very similar to exercise more. You can increase your revenue by $1 million a year, or you can increase it by $1 a year. So let's make it more specific here. If I was setting this goal, I could say, I want to increase revenue from my digital subscribers specifically. So this is me providing some strategic guidance on how my team will achieve this goal, that we want to focus on digital subscribers. So we've made this a more effective goal by making it more specific. Increase revenue, again, still very vague. So let's make this measurable. We're going to increase revenue from our subscribers by 50%. This is something that at the end of the quarter or whatever time period it is, you can measure this and say, yes, I did this, or no, I didn't. 50% is a lot though, so let's make this more achievable and realistic. We're going to increase revenue by 10% from our digital subscribers instead of 50%. But increasing revenue may actually cause more harm elsewhere in the organization. So being relevant means being relevant to your company's overall or your team's overall goals. So to make this more relevant, I can say I'm going to increase revenue from digital subscribers by 10% without increasing their cancellation rates, to make sure that I'm actually increasing revenue overall instead of just revenue in a short-term fashion. And then making it time-based as well. Increase revenue without a time period means you don't know when you're going to measure it. You don't know what your goal is really. So we're going to add a time limit to this. So our final key result here is increase Q1 revenue from digital subscribers by 10% without increasing cancellation rates. So you can see how you can use this methodology to kind of progress your goals in a way that makes them a lot more stronger. So let's go back to New Year's resolutions. So instead of planning New Year's resolutions, let's walk through the process of creating New Year's OKRs. That would be a lot more effective for someone to commit to. So let's say my objectives for the year are to improve my physical health, improve my mental health, and improve my financial health. That's pretty well rounded. I think that, these are the three things that I want to focus on the most in the next year. So let's start on the first one, improve my physical health. This is a good goal. This is a good goal. I feel good about this, but how will I know that I've achieved it? Well, let's get some key results in there. I could say I want to lose 5 pounds. I will believe that I've improved my physical health if I lose 5 pounds this year. I want 2 of my blood tests 6 months apart to show my total cholesterol below 200 milligrams. This is a very specific goal. Maybe I set this goal because I have high cholesterol, and this is a really important thing for me to achieve. And if I'm a runner, I could say my 5K race time, I want that to improve from 35 minutes to 30 minutes. So again, a clear, measurable way to know that I've improved my physical health here. Let's go through some goals for my mental health. I might say I'd like to meditate 5 times a week. I'd like to sleep at least 7.5 hours a night. And I want to reduce my phone screen time from 4 hours a day to 2 hours a day. Again, as long as I believe that these key results will help me to achieve this objective of improving my mental health, then these are solid key results. Improving my financial health. Key results here could be, I want to increase my 401k contribution by 2% without taking on additional debt. So again, I wanted to point out here, it's important to make this one relevant by having the second part here. It's very easy to increase your 401k contribution, but if the result is that you've gone into debt on your credit card, then you're actually not helping your financial health. So having these qualifying statements in here is really important for certain objectives or for certain key results. I want to create a budget by the end of Q1 that accounts for 90% of my monthly expenses. So it's important here to call out the timing, because if I'm planning these New Year's OKRs for the whole year, if I create that budget on December 31st, it's not really going to improve my financial health in 2020. It'll help for 2021, but not for this year. So I'm going to want to create a budget by the end of Q1 that accounts for this so that I can benefit from the budget for the rest of the year. And pay off 100% of my student loan debt. That should definitely improve my financial health. So now let's say I have a team who wants to set their own OKRs. You could think of this as maybe a department versus the teams within that department. So in the department of my New Year's resolutions and my personal well-being, let's say I have a small team who each of them wants to set their own objectives. I've got a personal improvement team consisting of a chef, a trainer, and a financial advisor. So let's see how they're going to plan their objectives and key results in order to support the overall objectives and key results that I set for myself. So my trainer might have some OKRs, such as create a weekly training schedule that supports my physical and mental fitness. You can see here that it's not just hitting my objective for physical health, it's also hitting my mental health. They might say, I want Brian to do a minimum of 2 strength workouts per week, increase your running mileage by 20% every 6 months, and make sure that 100% of training sessions are completed before 7 p.m. on work nights so I don't get to bed too late. So you can see here that the trainer is primarily focused on my physical health because that is their skill. That's what they're best at, and that's where they can contribute the most. But at the same time, it's also important that they know the overall picture and they see that, oh, I also have this goal of getting to bed earlier each night and getting more sleep, so I can contribute to that in my own way. Similarly, my personal chef may have a goal to say, I'm going to reduce meat consumption, increase the percentage of meals that are 100% vegetarian from 10 to 50%. Test 5 new recipes that replace animal protein with plant protein, and reduce my monthly food budget by 5%. So again, my chef, you would think, oh, that's about physical health. That's about watching calories and cholesterol and weight loss. And so, of course, their focus is going to be on those areas because that's their strength, but they're also paying attention to not wanting to negatively impact my financial goals as well. So they could easily have, tripled their budget buying plant protein that might be more expensive than animal protein, but they realize that I have these financial goals as well, and they're going to commit to a key result that supports those also. So thinking about how how teams can have an impact on overall OKRs, and this can be whether it's team members or whether it's teams within a department. It's really important to let the experts give feedback and collaborate on the goals themselves. So using this scenario, if I presented these objectives and key results to my trainer, they might look at these and say, you know what, 5 pounds, weight actually isn't the best indicator of physical health. Waist circumference is. So I'm going to change this. I suggest changing it to reducing your waist circumference by 1 inch. And if I trust, as long as I trust that that's correct and there's no reason for me to believe otherwise, then I should be willing to change this. And this is how you kind of collaborate back and forth on the goals with your team. Similarly, my financial advisor might look at this and say, well, paying off 100% of your student debt based on your income, based on your debt, that's going to probably be impossible. So I think you need to scale back if you want to improve, if you actually want to achieve this goal. So let's go for paying off 50% instead. So in this way, you kind of go back and forth and make sure that you get input from the people who are actually going to be doing the work so that you're not committing to things that are either impossible or maybe aren't the best goals. So let's talk through a sample planning schedule. So how do you go from nothing to having a set of completed OKRs? I tend to start with, as the product manager on the team, I usually take the lead on drafting the objectives. Again, I'm not going to be setting them in stone at this point. I'm just going to be brainstorming and drafting them so that the team has something to start talking about. So in the process of drafting these objectives, I'm going to want to talk to my stakeholders, to my team members, to leads on other teams who I work closely with, to just understand the full scope of what everyone's working on next quarter, where they think the industry is going, where I can have the most impact, and so on. Then you're going to want to share those drafted objectives for feedback. Again, you can share it with key stakeholders, key team leads who you work closely with, and your own team members to just say, are these the right goals? This is what I'm thinking for the quarter. Am I going down the right track? The next step would be to refine those objectives based on that feedback and also start defining your draft key results. So how are you going to measure these objectives at the end of the quarter to know that you've completed it? And this is a good thing to do with your team members, especially if you have any analysts, any data analysts on the team. They can provide really good feedback as to what good metrics could be for success there. And then you want to share your the completed draft OKRs for feedback with key stakeholders, key team leads again, and your team members. So once you've got those objectives and key results drafted out, another round of feedback is really helpful to make sure that these feel achievable, that they're SMART goals, and that they're the right goals for you to hit this quarter. And then you want to finalize them. Up until this point, it's okay to have some variables in there that aren't completely solid. So let's say you want to increase your revenue by a certain amount, but you're not exactly sure what last quarter's revenue was. It's okay to have X, go from X% to Y%, or go, make X more dollars a year. But at this point, you really want to get those, once you feel like those are solid OKRs, that's the right time to finalize all of that and start digging out the data and committing to specifics. And then a really important part is to publicize them. This is going to look different for every different company type there is. So if you're at a small startup with a dozen or 2 dozen people, there's a good chance that you're going to want to share these OKRs with everyone. If you're at a much larger company, you're probably going to want to share it just with your stakeholders or with key teams that you work with. However, it should be accessible to anyone in the organization, whether you pin it to a Slack channel you have or find some other means of sharing it. It's really important that it's transparent, and there should be no reason to keep it a secret. So when you're soliciting feedback from team members or stakeholders, there's really good questions to ask to try to get to the bottom of whether you have some good goals in there. So a good question is, are these OKRs too easy? Are they too hard? Are there ones that we won't be able to measure? Are there ones that aren't really that important? What goals are missing that you think are important? Again, this could be based on trends within your company or industry trends or upcoming impact events that you know are going to happen. Are there better ways to measure success than the key results that you've provided? Again, data analysts are great resources. They to know, oh, there's this way of measuring this that maybe you didn't think of. There's a couple things to remind everyone though in this process. First one is that the drafts are 100% flexible while you're planning. It's hard to do this as a sometimes it can be hard to get your team to give feedback, and if they feel like, oh, this is what leadership wants, you know, they may not feel like providing you with the feedback that you're looking for. So it's really important to make it clear that when OKRs are in the process of being drafted, they're 100% flexible. We've completely rewritten objectives and key results. We've completely removed or added them. Literally anything can happen. It's also good to remember that key results should be stretch goals. Just because something's hard to achieve isn't a reason to scale it back. But if something is impossible, then that's definitely a good red flag to say, okay, I need to scale this back a little. It's also important to remind everyone that OKRs are outcomes, not initiatives. It can be very common no matter who you're talking to, for people to start getting really into solutioning and start talking about exactly how you're going to achieve this thing. We're going to develop this software and do this marketing campaign and create this service. That's not important at this step. That's obviously important within the quarter. But right now it's more about the outcomes that you're looking for, not the very specific initiatives you're going to take on to complete those outcomes. So the last section I wanted to talk through are specific challenges, red flags, and strategies that I've come across in the process of doing this for several quarters. So one thing that comes up is cross-team planning. So if you've got multiple teams in the organization and you have shared goals across those teams, it can be difficult to know, what do I commit to in my team's OKRs versus what another team is working on for the same, for a related goal or initiative. So it's important to ask, what impact will each team have on the strategy side versus the delivery side? So if a team is really focused on defining the strategy of this new goal, that team wants to commit to key results that are really related to that, versus if a team is really just focused on delivering something that another team has prepared the strategy for, you want goals specifically for delivery. So let's talk through an example project and the teams working on it and how that might shake out. So let's say you had a goal or an objective to automate marketing emails. And this is a goal that's going to require 3 teams to work on it. You've got the marketing team, you've got the tech team, and you've got the data team. And the marketing team might be really focused on the content. So what's in the email, what's on the page that the email leads you to. So they're going to want to commit to goals related to the open rate of that email, the click-through rate, the conversion rate. Those are the things that the marketing team is probably going to have the biggest impact on. Meanwhile, the data team is more about, who are we targeting with this? How accurate is our data? And so they may commit to goals related to the delivery rate of these, how many of these emails bounce back or are undeliverable, how many of them get flagged as spam, or the conversion rate too. So this could be a shared KR between marketing and data to hit a certain conversion rate and hit the right people with the right content. Meanwhile, the tech team, they're not creating the content. They're not deciding who to send it to. They're really about delivery and reliability of their services. So for the tech team, it would be good to set service level objectives, like this service uptime is 99.9% of the time. This service is active. This service has errors on less than 0.1% of email sends it performs. So it's really about how good is the execution versus the end results like conversion rate or click-through rate. So there's a couple questions you can ask yourself too once you're getting close to finalizing your OKRs that can really strengthen them a lot. So the first question, and this is one that I've fallen into a trap with a couple times, is can we actually measure each key result? It can be very common to get excited about measuring this, using this really obscure metric for a very specific slice of your audience as a key result. And that can be great as long as you can actually measure it. If you can't measure it at the start of the quarter, then change the key result. Change it to figure out how to measure this thing. And then in the future quarters, you can commit to that key result. You can use that metric for your key results. But if you can't measure it, don't assume that you'll be able to learn how to measure it and improve it within the same quarter. This is a fun one. Is there a destructive way to succeed at a key result but actually create negative results? So let's say you had a goal to increase your conversion to purchase. You could say, you know what, I'm going to only pitch my service to one client who I'm very confident will purchase it. And if they do, then I've got a 100% conversion to purchase. But my revenue just dropped because I'm only selling one service. So a good way to kind of put a control on this is to add another key result to ensure that the overall results are positive. So you could say, I want to increase my conversion to purchase and increase my overall revenue. That way, you're not consciously or unconsciously avoiding taking risks. And lastly, can you meet each key result for an objective without actually achieving the objective? Since the OKR creation process is very collaborative, very flexible, things are getting changed a lot, there can be circumstances where by the end of the process, the key results that you've settled on aren't actually key results for the objective that you've created. So in these cases, you might want to consider either reframing the objective to be more specific or more broad, or have a different focus entirely, or consider adding or removing key results that either are needed or are no longer needed. Thank you for attending and watching. I would love to talk OKRs or product management with anyone who's interested. Feel free to add me on and send me a message on LinkedIn if you'd like to discuss anything. Appreciate your time and thank you.